Second of all, tomorrow's the exam. Then, next week, I'm sure you've heard that you have STAR testing. This may or may not impact our class very much. I'd like to be very specific about what my plan is for next week. First of all, you, on Monday and Tuesday, will be testing with your English class cohort. Wherever you go for English, you and those other students have a specific plan for your testing. It'll be described by your English teacher on Monday, and possibly on Tuesday. I will be testing Miss Nye's third period English students. Periods 1, 2, 3, and possibly part of 4. Similarly, you and your English class will have some sort of a plan. If you are a senior, you should know that, as always, there's no get-out-of-school-free thing. You're still supposed to be here, but unfortunately, you can't come to this room during period 3 because I'll be testing. So if you are a senior, I'm sorry that I don't have details. The office can verify. I think you go to the library or the girls' gym or some sort of babysitter. Periods 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4 on Monday and Tuesday. My plan, on Monday, I'll be STAR testing, and then, after lunch, periods 5 and 6, we'll have sort of like a free study hall, nothing happening day. On Tuesday, listen carefully, I will be distributing the papers for the review process and the Your World project. Chances are, smart kids like you are going to have a lot of downtime during STAR testing, so I'd recommend use the paper in the back to complete assignments 11.1, which is due Thursday next week. Then, on Tuesday, swing by as early as possible to pick up the handouts for the review process and end-of-the-year project. If you can skim them a little bit, get started on 1 or 2 things, it would improve your success rate and your pacing significantly. So Tuesday, come hell or high water, make sure you come get your papers from my classroom. Wednesday, STAR testing is just for sophomores. So we will have our regular class like this, at this time, in this room, unless you're a sophomore, which I don't think I have any in this period. On Wednesday, we will pre-register for the AP exam, unless you've done that in another class. On Wednesday, we'll have a guest speaker from UCSB to tell you about a program called the Climate Justice Movement, which offers a bunch of things you probably want to hear about, only about a 10-minute presentation. And finally, on Wednesday, I will introduce and we'll start to discuss the year-end project. Thursday is devoted to assignments 11.1 and a discussion of that content. Friday, you have the Unit 11 quiz.
Is that going to be normal length or is it?
No, it's going to be much shorter. It's a single piece of paper for each.
Friday part?
Correct. Please look up. By Monday, the 21st of April, we're in full-time review mode for the 2 weeks leading up to your AP test. Are there any brain busters for me? The first thing I'd like to do is go over the stars, which are in your study guide. Please make sure that you have your papers out for Samantha to stamp. And while she's stamping, there's a few things I'd like you to add to your notes. Please look up. Make sure you have the terms that are associated with a study goal number. Some of these are new today, so please make sure that you have all the terms associated with the study goal number. Also, please look at my right hand now. You'll need this drawing for study goal number 25, which we discuss in class today. I can only give you about a minute or two to catch up with the whiteboard, because as I mentioned earlier, we're rushing to the exam tomorrow. Audrey, is this the sleazy friend you told me that you're trying to ditch?
Yeah.
Got it, thank you. Probably not take the back of your fingernails, scratch that outside edge. Turns yellow. No, it's not. And also snap it. Go down the trunk. That snap section turns yellow. It doesn't turn yellow. We have a lot of other follow-up questions. That color change is pretty rapid. No.
You're doing an okay job. Maybe. Why not?
Yes.
Is that not my claw?
Yes.
Is it not? You're not allowed to be. Gotcha. You're just trying to avert everyone's focus. Avert everyone's focus.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that it came to that, but...
Now I will start. If there are letters that you cannot decipher, I will clarify them in speech. Remember, first of all, that the stars on the study guide do not predict what's on the exam. They merely identify the things that require extra attention. Second of all, remember that I warned you already. This particular exam has a greater percentage of content outside lecture than previous units. Usually, you know the stuff in class will be a majority of the exam. This time, there's about twice as much as usual on the test that we did not discuss in lecture. Starting with the vocab, going in order of the study guide. NIMBY gets a star. Night soil gets a star. And is defined in study goal 48. Micro layer gets 1 star. A lot of my students didn't know what it was. I thought it was defined in the book. The microlayer is the thinnest living crust on top of bodies of water or soil. For example, almost all the photosynthesis in the ocean takes place in the top 3/4 of an inch. About 90% of the soil's biomass lives in the top 1/4 inch. These are called the microlayers. The thinnest layer at the very surface of soil and water that has all the ecological activities. Study goal number 1 gets a star. Study goal number 3 gets a star. And as part of a cluster, you know how some study goals discuss a single topic from many different angles? 3 was the first one about landfills. These also include 4, 25, and 39. As I've told you before, it's important for you to look at these study goals together, because the movie says one thing, the textbook says something else, and the articles in the reader have additional content to get the whole picture about landfills. 3, 4, 25, 39. Number 6 gets 1 star. And was an introduction to 2 major themes, integrated waste management and American incinerators. So integrated waste management and incinerators, that's like 7 other study goals. 21, 24, 40 through 44, and number 47. Remember to look at all of these together, not in order, when you study tonight. Oh, speaking of tonight, we're showing Red Gold again if you happen to be crazy about studying and watching movies. Integrated Waste Management, yeah, IWM. Yes?
Is this going to be the last ASEP?
I believe it might be. We may be able to throw down one ASEP next week or something during review, but I'm not really committed to that. In study goal number 8, we saw a lot of examples that weren't specifically identified of what is called waste recovery. Please look up these terms. So you know that in Santa Barbara we make our sewage into electricity energy recovery. And you know that in Japan they take all the water out of the landfill and filter it to make ponds for whatever, water recovery. And you know that in Peru they decompose all the sewage to get all the nutrients out so they can grow the algae to feed the fish to make food. Nutrient recovery. This was all introduced in number 8. Number 9 is about reclamation, 1 star. You've got 1 study goal, number 35, and 2 articles, 45 and 46, on reclamation. '11 gets 3 stars. Mandatory trivia about the composition of the Earth, and a discussion of those processes that shuffle the geology of the Earth's crust. Please remember, in number 11, I added the term freeze-thaw cycling. It's a type of mechanical weathering. 12 gets a star. 14 gets a star. For you nerds, there's an example of strategic metals in Article 33. So for number 14, you might want to just glance at number 33. 14 goes with 33. I'd like to add a vocabulary word to number 14. It is this one, conflict resource. These are resources that are extracted to support a conflict. For example, the famous blood diamonds of Sierra Leone. You get a bunch of children slaves to dig up a bunch of diamonds, then you sell those diamonds to Europe, and you use the spoils of that sale to purchase weapons and gasoline to fund conflict. Conflict resources. Number 15 gets 3 stars. We talked a lot about this. There were some very good examples in article number 53. And please remember that number 15, a lot I got to tell you here, so get ready. Keep track of the impact. The whole point of the question was to look at how different mining types affect the environment. Number 2, we don't use all of those methods for the same product. Mountaintop removal and strip mining are primarily for coal. Placer mining is primarily for gold and precious stones, so on. Remember also that at number 15, I wanted to highlight some vocabulary for the conversation. Spoils and overburden, tailings and gang, impoundment, subsistence mining, and MTR is an abbreviation for mountaintop removal. Finally, in number 15, remember that I explained somewhere along the way the 3 different ways that water is polluted by mines. These. There's a very interesting example in number 34 of the water pollution in mines thing. '17 gets 1 star and goes with 42 to 44. 19 is about e-waste, 1 star. But there's a problem. You know that I'm really fond of your book. I love the authors. I love the local coverage. I love the detail. I love the simplicity. But unfortunately, when they wrote the book, e-waste was like, holy crap, we might have a problem with this soon, like 10 years ago. By now, we know a lot more about that problem. So, it's outdated. 19 introduced e-waste. I've included 4 articles in your reading packet about e-waste, 49 through 52. This is one of the times where your book needs supplementary material because of its age. So for number 19, the book goes, hey, there's this thing called e-waste. I don't know, maybe it's bad. Check out the reading packet, 49 through 52. In number 20, 1 star for the concept of brownfields. Did we discuss this yesterday? Abandoned industrial and commercial sites? You should know, by the way, that the example I gave you in class about the grandparent who donates the paint facility that's abandoned by the grandchild that donates it to the city that can't manage it, that sells it to the public, that builds a school there, that was not invented. That's a real example of a very famous community in upstate New York called Love Canal. If by a few years ago you mean 40 years ago, yes. About 40 years ago, citizens of Love Canal couldn't explain a mysterious cancer cluster until they figured out that the effing elementary school was built on top of an abandoned paint factory. And if it wasn't a paint factory, something. I think their problem was they were irrigating with groundwater from a well that was polluted with the chemicals that had seeped into the soil. I don't know the details of that. And the community basically crumbled. Real estate prices crashed. Everybody wanted to leave town, but it's a small working class rural community, so they couldn't afford to move because they couldn't sell the house, because nobody would buy the house, because the place was a cancer cluster. The city couldn't afford to clean it, the state wasn't responsible, the feds weren't responsible, and meanwhile, there's a community dying. Out of desperation, a bunch of people demonstrated, called their congressman. Congressman says, fine, I'll show up. Where's the meeting? It's at the president of the PTA's house. Check this out. Congressman walks in, goes, hi, nice to meet you all. Goes inside. 15 minutes later, the woman that owned the house, who was the president of the PTA, I believe, walks out on the porch and says, I'd like to announce to the national media, we've kidnapped Congressman so-and-so.
Badass.
Out of desperation, given that nobody's responsible for brownfields, she said, look, I'm not a gorilla. I'm like a nice lady who contributes my spare time to help my kids' school, but my kid's dying of cancer and nobody's helping, and we've got more kids that got to go to school and don't want to get cancer, so throw me a bone here. After a couple days, they let the dude go. He's like, oh, she's a wonderful cook. She has a very nice, clean guest room. It was a good time. But we really got to figure out what's going on with this Love Canal situation and responsibility for abandoned industrial pollution sites. So a few years later, the federal government created the, which is a giant lump of money. BT Dubs, this is study goal number 27. You know, the brownfield thing sort of segued into the Superfund thing, so I just went with it. I'm not really on top of my game today. I'm a little distracted. That was kind of sloppy transition, whatever. Number 27 is about Superfund. The feds say, look, we're going to fine, or rather, we're going to tax every single member of the dirtiest industries. I'll describe those later. Sweet. They're all here. I love that. Thanks, man. God, I love doing this. The government said, we are going to fine all members of the dirtiest industries. They say, you make paint? Well, paint is dirty. We're going to take 1% tax on all your revenue. And they say, oh, you make pharmaceuticals? Well, pharmaceuticals are dirty. We're tired of cleaning up after your businesses. We're going to fine everybody in the industry. This was good and bad. Good in the sense that it built a giant chunk of money that was dedicated for the worst brownfields. They're called Superfund sites. Basically, the feds lined up all the known brownfields and said, we will tackle from the top down. As long as we can afford it, we're going to clean up the worst, and then the second worst, and the third worst brownfields with this money. That's the good part. It was like a gajillion dollars.
How much were they taxing?
I don't know. It was significant because the bad part is you're taxing every member of that business community, even if they're trying their best to be responsible corporate citizens. So one of the dudes was like, hey, wait a minute. I just spent like $1 billion to clean up my paint factory so I don't cause pollution, and now you're going to tax me? That would be like saying, we're going to tax all the redheads because they're more likely to get in car accidents or something. Like, wait, well, why would I want to drive carefully if I already got taxed? Like, where's my reward for being good at driving? What? Yeah. This is sort of what you might consider like racial profiling in the corporate world. And for the same reason that racial profiling makes us all uncomfortable and is mostly legal-ish, kind of. Gang injection. The Superfund was closed after only a few years. We got a president that wanted to support the business community and said, look, we cannot fine every member of the industry just because some are polluters.
What president was it started?
Abraham Lincoln.
1980. Strengthened in 84 and 86.
Did Reagan take it away?
I believe so. I think it was already in the works when he came into office, and I think he opposed it from the beginning. And by the way, I should point out that this is just a perfectly rational way to discuss tax policy. I don't take sides on this debate. We all pay for it anyway. We either take it out of our tax dollars, citizen by citizen, or we take it out of a particular business group only, who probably has to raise prices, and then we pay more for those products if we consume them. Yeah?
So the super fund doesn't exist at all anymore?
The money still exists. The method of adding revenue to the fund does not. So the account is being quote-unquote spent down. Currently, there's something like 184 sites that were classified under Superfund, and probably enough funding to handle 15 or so of them.
Because I mean, why does it not make sense to like tax industries that break environmental restrictions or whatever stuff like that?
Because those members who have invested in doing better than the bad guys are still paying. So there's no incentive to be a good guy.
Okay, but you could just make it so that the companies that do, I'm just saying like, why is it going away? You could definitely say
It went away because of the racial profiling issue. Essentially the corporate profiling issue. Okay, I'm back to the study goals. Number 21 gets 1 star. I know we're moving backward because I'm just sort of freestyling a little bit. You know, sometimes when you freestyle, you're going to drop the ball. Did we discuss yesterday integrated waste management, number 21?
Yes, sir.
Sort of. I'll do it again. Please look up. We've had this pattern for a long, long time of taking our entire waste stream and putting it into the ground. But I think we discussed yesterday that that's stupid. Environmentally stupid, economically stupid, practically stupid. We invest all this money to get the stuff out of the ground, and then we run an economy on wasting it and putting it back in the ground. Since you're going to run out of stuff, you're going to run out of economy. It don't make no sense to anybody. A disposable economy crashes because you've thrown away your resource. So the goal is, let's keep as much waste out of the landfill as possible. There's a concept called landfill diversion. It's like deflecting. If you're the garbage, I go, nope, recycle, nope, compost, nope, hazardous waste treatment, and I keep as much out of the landfill as possible. Diversion. There are many ways to do this. You can remanufacture or reuse. You can recycle. You can mulch, compost, digestimate the energy, incinerate if it's done correctly, and you can treat the most hazardous material so it doesn't pollute in the future. Right. All the leading waste management systems on Earth are some blend of these. And please note, study goal number 44 gives you examples of how we do this in Santa Barbara and San Francisco. 2 stars for that. Yep. Santa Barbara today diverts about 72% of their waste stream. And San Francisco, national leader, is over 90% now.
Send it to Oakland.
With a mission of being the first zero waste municipality in the United States by the year 2020. I know it's exciting. Do the video thing another time. 23 gets 1 star and goes with study goal 38.
Well.
38 gets 1. 23 gets 1 star and goes with 38. 24 gets 2 stars. One of those study goals that is important but not worthy of lecturing because it's just a bunch of definitions and stuff you can get out of the book. Don't say I didn't warn you. And in that one, which was 24, I'll remind you that one of the topics is incineration. 40, 41, and 47 are all about incinerators. 25 is the last one that I will lecture about. Gets 2 stars. Sanitary landfills. This goes with 3, 4, and 39. I'll say that again. 25, 2 stars, 3, 4, and 39. William?
Just about incinerators, I was just curious. They said that they were expanding and developing incineration like techniques in like Europe and whatnot. Is that not the case in America? Or are they just going with traditional incineration?
There's an article in your reader about a cutting-edge incinerator that they're trying to launch somewhere in the south. Anybody remember? Florida?
Okay.
That's, as far as I know, the only Japan-Denmark style incinerator project in the U.S.
I was just wondering if they were speaking of incinerators, just general.
We have a lot of dirt, so for us, landfilling is more competitive because the dirt's cheaper. Both Japan and Denmark, the landfill costs a ton of money, so incinerator in comparison is kind of worthy.
Yeah, okay.
In the U.S., we have giant volumes of garbage, so incineration seems less viable given the scale of our endless waste stream. So again, compared to those other countries, it's just harder here. Plus, incineration has a really bad name because we started doing it a long time ago before we had all these concerns about air pollution. So in the U.S., an incinerator is just a dirty word because it's such a negative, maligned process.
Okay.
We could, with our high-tech engineering and our brains and our mechanics and our energy potential, pull off high-tech incineration. But you know, starting a new concept in a giant economy when you're dealing with trash and pollution just doesn't sound like a very sexy topic.
No.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, the countries that do use these really like good incinerators, are they still like polluting, or are they like totally clean?
Incineration, when it's done correctly, may be the cleanest way to handle a large percentage of our waste stream.
So like you have in like residential areas and stuff?
If you regulate the burn chamber correctly and sort the garbage enough, all you get are non-polluting gases and a small volume of ash, which is useful. You can also harvest some energy. So of the combustive fuel, much of that energy can be made into electricity. It's probably not a good energy source, but it's a way to remediate some of, offset some of the costs. Look, number 25 is about landfills. And in this country, when we landfill, that doesn't mean putting your garbage in the ground. That's technically illegal. In this country, when we landfill, we have to follow laws about how you put it in the ground. There are 4 ingredients that are mandatory. Please look up. An impermeable base liner made out of clay or rubber that keeps the water from percolating through the trash into the ground. I mean, imagine if you have all your homework out and somebody puts a big pile of coffee grounds and you know it's going to rain, you know it's going to mess up your homework.
It's made of clay or water.
Clay or rubber. But the liner keeps that water from percolating into the ground. Second, you have groundwater monitoring wells to make sure that the leachate isn't leaking through to pollute groundwater. This is federally mandated. Third, you use compacted soil layers, like building a triple-decker sandwich, or then a quadruple-decker sandwich, or then a quintuple-layer sandwich, so that the trash won't fly around. And finally, you have to take out and contain all of the leachate. So you show you're responsible for keeping the garbage there and keeping the water pollution managed out of the groundwater. The whole point is to contain garbage, to put it in a bucket, so to speak, to packetize the garbage and keep it from polluting groundwater through leachate, and from polluting the local environment by floating away. Study goal number 26 will tell you which federal legislation forces which of these stars. Yes. I love all of you, and these are important questions, but I'm down to 6 minutes. We're a little bit rushed. I think we're going to have to go past the bell today. In number 27, we've already discussed the Superfund, but I'd like to add the dirtiest industries. There's basically two categories: electronic stuff and industrial chemistry. And not all chemistry is bad, but there are what's called the 5 Ps of industrial chemistry. 27. The 5 Ps of industrial chemistry are the large-scale chemical processes that make the most hazardous waste. They all start with the letter P, thus the name. Plastics, pharma, like pharmaceuticals, petroleum, pesticide, and paint/pigment.
They're the 5 P's of
Industrial chemistry, the dirtiest polluters in large-scale chemical economy.
Well, where did 3 and 4?
Petroleum and pesticide, but I gotta move on. I know we're rushed. I apologize for this. We're just a couple minutes after the bell. 28 gets 2 stars, is one of those study goals where you can get all the information on your own, so go do it, but I said it's important. 29 gets 1 star. And now, I'd like to add a few words about your reading assignments. The reader has like 22 numbered questions. I'll classify these in our last 4 or 5 minutes. 30 locals only. 31 1 star. Example of water pollution from mining. 32 nerds only. 33, just an example of 14. 34, politics only. How the Bush-Obama transition affected mountaintop removal. 35, nerds only. 36, interesting story for fans of Victoria's Secret underwear. 37, very valuable facts to go with number 15. 38, covered elsewhere. 39, 1 star to accompany 25. When the bell rings, I think I'll need another 1.5 minutes. 40 and 41, part of the incinerator cluster. 42 is split. The cartoon part, kind of pointless. The article, very interesting politics and economics. 43, 1 star. Please look up. Another way to keep stuff out of the landfill is to make less garbage in the first place. That's not diversion. It's called source reduction. Like, why do we have to package a little thumb drive in a giant sheet of plastic? Source reduction is not diversion. It's another way to keep garbage out of the landfill. Be quiet. Make less garbage in the first place. 44, 2 stars. How Santa Barbara diverts 72% and how San Francisco diverts 90+%. 45, nerds only. 46, nerds only, but it introduces mandatory vocab. It's written on the board right here. Phytocapping and also mycocapping. Please look up. Using plants, please look up. Or mushrooms, please look up. Phytocapping is plants, mycocapping is mushrooms. To bioremedy reclamation sites. 47, amazing, interesting example of high-tech incinerators in the U.S. Tons of good info in 47. I'll need just a few seconds. 48 is for nerds only, about why our poop can't be used as fertilizer anymore. 49 through 52 are about e-waste. Remember, your book just kind of didn't have this content, so you got to get it somewhere. And especially article number 52 gets 1 star because you've probably seen all these places where you can recycle cell phones to quote-unquote save gorillas. That's not a joke. The primary cause of gorilla habitat deforestation is the extraction of a metal that's very easy to recycle out of cell phones. When you recycle cell phones, lower the price of this resource. Coincidentally, it's a conflict resource now. 53 is a great example of the impacts of illegal mining. And 54 is a unique way to deal with plastic pollution, nerds only. I'm sorry to go over the bell. Remember, everything's on the video on the internet. Goodbye, children.